Well, welcome to our weekday reflection this Wednesday, the 29th of April. And I want to share with you today a passage of scripture that was very important to me when I was growing up, and perhaps later on you'll understand why. And I'm reading from the book of the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 1, verses 4 to 10. The word of the Lord came to me saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." "Alas, sovereign Lord," I said, "I do not know how to speak. I am too young." But the Lord said to me, "Do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to, and to say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you, and I will rescue you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth. And he said to me, "I put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." Perhaps not many people know who John Quincy Adams is, other than perhaps Americans. And I'm reading here, he was a lawyer, senator, congressman, secretary of state, ambassador to the Netherlands, Germany, France, Russia, and England. He was both the second and the sixth president of the United States, having been called out of retirement. And yet at the age of 70, John Quincy Adams, despite all his achievements, success, fame, wrote the following: "My whole life has been a succession of disappointments. I didn't have any success in anything I undertook." Here was a person of considerable success and fame who felt a failure. And I wonder how many people feel the same, because they're looking to other people to validate their self-worth and dignity. See, we place so much emphasis, don't we, upon youth and beauty, athletic ability, upon intelligence and education, wealth, success and fame. And we spend large parts of our lives looking at other people and wishing that we were either like them or actually feeling inadequate. And the result is that we are often far more prone to listen to those negative voices going on in our heads, the voices of doubt and uncertainty within our minds, rather than listen to the voice of God and the call of God upon our lives. And so often we fail to fulfill God's call and purpose for our lives. Now, there are various estimates about the number of internal conversations that the average person has going on in their mind on any given day. And some estimate that the number of conversations we have are as many as 60,000. Will I do this or will I do that? But what's interesting is 80% of those conversations are negative. The result of that is that negative comments or doubts play into that internal doubt or conversation that we're already having within our mind, meaning that we're far more likely to listen to negative things that play to our doubts, our insecurities and our fears than we are to listen to positive comments. And you think about that for a while. You have 10 positive comments made about you during the day and one negative one. Which do you think plays on your mind the most? The positive comments or the negative one? It'll be the negative one. It'll be the negative comment that will keep you awake at night. Psychologist Dr. Henry Barnett wrote that inadvertent negative comments, even in front of patients who are unconscious, interfere with the patient's ability to recover. You know, as a result, we're often unable to hear God's voice because of the internal chatter going on with their own minds. I'm too young. I can't speak. And we come up with all sorts of reasons why we can't or shouldn't do what God is calling us to do. But what would the world look like if everyone listened to the negative voices within their own minds? Or if they listened to the negative voices of those around them? Thomas Edison's teacher described him as, and I'm quoting, too stupid to learn. Thomas Edison. Albert Einstein's teacher described him as, and I'm quoting, mentally slow, unsociable, and adrift in his own foolish dreams. One Missouri newspaper fired Walt Disney, saying that he lacked ideas and was not creative enough. You know, Norman Vincent Peale tells a story about being in Hong Kong once and seeing a man in a tattoo shop having the following tattooed on his arm: born to lose. And Vincent Peale writes later on, long before it was tattooed on his body, it was tattooed on his mind. How many people have those negative thoughts tattooed on their mind? I can't. I'm not good enough. Too young. I can't speak. And the problem is that when we are measuring ourselves against other people, we will never measure up. Jeremiah 29 verse 11, we read these words: I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and to give you a future. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and give you a future. So your self-worth, your dignity, your value comes not from what other people think of you, not even from what you think of yourself, but from the fact that you are made in the image and likeness of a God who loves you and died for you. A God who has plans for your future, plans to prosper you. You know, growing up, I had a severe speech impediment. It was so severe that the young boy across the road often had to interpret what I was saying for my mother. And when your mother can't understand what you are saying, you have a real problem. And yet, by the age of 7, I felt God's call into ministry. By the time I turned 12, I was publicly declaring to everyone that I was going to be an Anglican priest. I was going to be a preacher, even though I had this speech impediment and couldn't speak very well. And when I told people, most of them laughed at me. Even my school teachers mocked me, ridiculed me often about that. And it caused much anxiety for me. I had my doubts, and yet there was this strong sense that this is what God was calling to me. But not only did I have a speech impediment, it set me back in terms of English. And I can remember in year 7, having the teacher, my English teacher, make me stand up in front of the class and holding up a piece of work that I'd written, an essay of some kind, had red ink marks all over it, pen marks. And she said to me, Glenn, do yourself a favour and your peers and this school and leave and get an apprenticeship, because you'll never achieve anything or amount to much. Well, when I finished secondary college, I then went on and applied to Ridley Theological College to do a theological degree. And I remember sitting in the principal's office, and there was floor-to-ceiling shelves full of books. And the principal looking at me and saying, Glenn, you're too young. Go and work for a while, go and do a degree somewhere else at another university and come back. You're too young. And so I went off to RMIT and I studied town planning for 12 months. And then I went back to Ridley College and reapplied. This time they accepted me, fortunately. 4 years later, I completed my Bachelor of Theology and immediately enrolled in a postgraduate master's degree in theology, which I completed 2 years later. As a result, public speaking doesn't come naturally to me. I'm always very self-conscious about my own presentation, my own speaking. And so this passage from Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 to 10, was particularly important to me. It gave me great comfort because it was assuring me that God's hand was upon me, was God's hand leading. And I wonder if you have that assurance within your own life, that God's hand is indeed upon you, that God is leading you, that God will comfort you. Even before you were born, God knew you. While you were being knit together in your mother's womb, God knew you and appointed you. And I personally take great comfort in knowing that in my weakness, God's strength is made manifest. That Christ speaks through me, that it's not my words that count, but God's. And I take great comfort that God makes foolish the wisdom of the world. God chooses the foolish things to shame the proud. To know that you don't need to worry about your future. You don't need to worry about what to say, because God promises, and we read this in verse 5, I will put my words in your mouth. See, God knows the plans that He has for each and every one of us. He knows the plan that He has for your life. And so the question that I simply want to leave you with today is, which voice are you listening to? Are you listening to your own internal voice and the chatter that's going on, or are you listening to the voice of God? Are you listening to the voice of God and responding to His call upon your life? Or are you drowning amidst the symphony of negative voices around you and within your own mind? And so we read these words again. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart and appointed you as a prophet to the nations. And then in verse 9, then the Lord reached out His hand and touched my mouth. May the Lord indeed reach out, perhaps not touch your mouth, but touch your mind and set you free to be the person that He has indeed called you to be, that He may fulfill in you the plans and the purposes that He desires. May God indeed bless you this day, and may you find some stillness and quietness this day to listen to the still small voice of God.